Allô?
Salut.
Bonjour.
Hello. Bonjour. Bon, on est live.
Eh ben,
Ça va?
ouais, on est live. Bonjour à tous. Est-ce que vous voyez mon écran?
Attends, je vais.
Non.
Maintenant, oui.
Maintenant,
oui.
Ok, excellent. Bah écoutez, aujourd'hui on accueille Otávio Santana. Et avant de commencer cette session, je voudrais bien entendu parler au nom. J'aimerais parler au nom de l'équipe du Jug pour remercier nos commanditaires encore une fois. Banque Nationale, Adaptive, Intact Lab et Alitia. Merci beaucoup de nous permettre, via vos commandites, de nous permettre de pouvoir continuer notre activité. On en est très reconnaissant. À vous tous qui nous rejoignez aujourd'hui, merci d'être là. N'oubliez pas qu'on a toujours des licences IntelliJ à faire gagner. Donc, c'est assez simple pour vous inscrire. Il suffit tout simplement de soit nous tweeter en faisant une référence @MontréalJug ou alors #MontréalJug. Bien entendu, vous pouvez aussi nous rejoindre sur Slack et ça multiplie vos chances. N'hésitez pas à nous rejoindre sur Slack d'ailleurs. On commence à avoir une belle petite communauté. Et puis, c'est ça, on parle des sujets un peu d'actualité de Java. Ne soyez pas timides. Vous pouvez bien entendu proposer vos talks. Nous, on aime beaucoup ça. Donc, c'est sûr qu'à travers l'équipe du Jug, on est toujours un peu à la recherche de nouveaux sujets ou de sujets qui nous tiennent à cœur. Mais n'hésitez pas à juste nous envoyer un courriel à info@montrealjug.org et vous pouvez proposer n'importe quoi. Normalement, la durée, c'est environ 45 minutes, 1 heure. Mais si vous voulez démarrer, c'est juste 10 minutes. On pourrait très bien vous caler à nos événements. On vous recommande vivement ça. Ça vous permet, en tout cas personnellement, de pouvoir un petit peu grandir sur l'aspect présentation. Et c'est toujours une expérience super intéressante à avoir. Je pense que j'ai fini pour ces petites introductions administratives du Jug. Je pense, Rohan, je vais te laisser introduire notre invité aujourd'hui, Otávio.
il n'y a pas de news Java. Aujourd'hui, c'est Java 16. Henri,
est-ce que tu nous as présenté quelque chose? Est-ce que tu as préparé quelque chose, Henri?
Oui, non, mais il n'y a que ça. Aujourd'hui, c'est Java 16 qui vient de sortir officiellement.
Super. Mais qu'est-ce qu'il y a de spécial dans Java 16? Est-ce que c'est juste un incrément de version?
Non, en fait, c'est pas mal d'affaires. Donc, c'est la version où il y a les sealed classes. Attends, je vais vous sortir le truc, parce que là, on me demande de raconter plus de choses. Attends, il est où? Ah, là, voilà.
Bah, écoute,
donc, dans Java 16, vous avez Vector API. Il y a le fait que tout est rendu sur GitHub. Donc, maintenant, si vous voulez collaborer au JDK, c'est tout sur GitHub. Il y a quand même un peu de red tape, mais par contre, récupérer le code, le compiler chez vous, le jouer avec, c'est beaucoup plus agréable que quand c'était sur Mercurial. Donc, je trouve ça super intéressant. Pour les amateurs de Docker, maintenant, il y a un port, ils l'ont porté à Alpine, donc ça fonctionne correctement sur Alpine avec quelque chose de supporté pour vrai. Je vais enlever les trucs un peu funky. Il y a Record, donc les deux trucs intéressants, c'est pattern matching pour les instance of. Je vous laisserai regarder le détail qui est devenu officiel, c'est plus en incubateur. Les records sont plus en incubateur et les sealed class sont en deuxième preview, donc ça s'en vient tranquillement. Pour ceux qui ont compris, Java 17, c'est la nouvelle LTS, donc c'est la prochaine version importante. Donc là, on est une version avant la très importante 17, dans lesquelles justement on devrait avoir des sealed classes qui sont terminées et un peu tout. Fait qu'il n'y a pas beaucoup de choses dans 17. Je vais faire de la self-publicité. Si vous voulez en savoir plus sur ce genre de choses, justement, ce jeudi, chez O'Reilly, je vais donner une formation sur Discover Modern Java. Donc, ça parle de Java 8 jusqu'à 17. Ça tombe bien. Donc, si vous voulez apprendre toutes ces choses, je vais en parler jeudi. Vous pouvez vous inscrire pour ceux qui sont sur O'Reilly Online. Bon, je vais laisser Otávio. Otávio, tu le fais en français ou en anglais?
J'ai parfait anglais, pardon.
Je
comprends. Je comprends toutes les choses, mais aujourd'hui, j'ai une live code et je préfère c'est très facile pour moi à faire live code en anglais. Pardon.
C'est sûr que
Parfait.
passer en... Ouais. Mais il n'y a pas de
Oui,
problème.
français, c'est très beau. J'adore parler français. Il y a beaucoup de choses que j'ai fait français. Maintenant, j'ai beaucoup d'amis qui parlent français, comme Juan, qui c'est brésilien, mais généralement, quand je travaille avec le code, je préfère faire l'anglais. Pardon,
Ouais,
mais le prochaine, je veux faire peut-être
Cool.
tout le français.
Otávio est un polyglotte. Tu parles quoi, 4 langues au moins? Portugais, espagnol, français, anglais? 5? C'est quoi la 5e?
Italien.
Italien? Oh, wow. Bon, ok, je me tais, Juan. Ouais, je me tais, je laisse Juan faire le pitch. C'est bon.
Otávio est un ami brésilien. J'ai grandi dans la même ville qu'Otávio. C'est full. Mais j'ai jamais connu Otávio là. J'ai connu Otávio São Paulo et quelques années avant. Ok, je pense que 2 ou 3 ans avant.
Oui, c'est Kikon, São Paulo, c'est vrai?
Exactement, Kikon, São Paulo.
Oui.
Kikon, São Paulo. Et on a beaucoup d'amis qui sont proches, les mêmes amis, mais j'ai jamais vu Otávio à Salvador da Bahia. Et après qu'on a...
Je pense que pas maman aussi.
Ah oui. Et vraiment, j'ai joué sur Java, le jeu du Brésil. Et maintenant, Otávio, c'est la raison que je suis maintenant ici à Montréal, vraiment. Et c'est ça. Et j'ai une idée d'inviter Otávio et pour parler de NoSQL Design Pitfalls au Java. Désolé pour mon français aussi, c'est pas parfait. Il y a moins que 2 ans que je parle français, que j'ai commencé à étudier français aussi. Mais c'est mieux. La première fois que j'ai rencontré la dernière année, Anthony et Henri, je pense que c'est un peu mieux. C'est ça.
Comment c'est très mieux que moi quand on parle français. So.
C'est full. Maintenant, pour moi, c'est plus difficile de penser en anglais parce que toutes les fois, je travaille en français, c'est plus difficile de penser en anglais.
Pour moi, c'est le contraire. Quand je parle sur code, sur source, je ne sais pas comment parler source en français. Généralement, je fais en anglais.
OK. Otávio, c'est...
Oui. Merci. Salut. Comment allez-vous? Je suis Otávio. Je suis brésilien. Je travaille chez JGeeks. C'est un magasin en Portugal. Maintenant, je suis staff ingénieur. Je suis Java champion. J'ai aussi c'est JCP Executive Member, Apache Commité, Eclipse Committer, Eclipse Product Leader in several specifications. J'aime écrire beaucoup de livres et aussi articles sur technologie. Aujourd'hui, je vais faire cette présentation en anglais parce que il y a live code et je préfère faire cette présentation en anglais car, so hello everybody. Sorry to my terrible French. I'm trying to do my best to hopefully next year do my whole presentation in French. Right now, my biggest lack in French is to do live code in French. Okay, so that's why I decided to do the presentation only in English. Hopefully, you understand me. But okay, let's talk about NoSQL because that's the main reason that we are here, right? And NoSQL is not the buzzword anymore. Right now, we have like cloud native to everything. But anyway, there are a lot of companies who decided to use NoSQL database. There are a lot of solutions who decided to use. We have several success cases such as Netflix, Facebook, and yes, as in solution, we have a lot of failure case on this side as well. But what would I start? Okay, I guess everybody here around me knows exactly what is NoSQL database, right? But let's go to another point. let's explain to you what is not a NoSQL database. Okay? NoSQL does not mean no security, right? So when you decide to use NoSQL, we need to also think about security as well. There is a research that say that 75% of the whole Redis servers are infected just because the IP is public. There is no user, there is no password in several NoSQL database, or when it does, it's basically the default user and password. So you are able to access several databases because it has a public IP, or maybe because it has the default user and credential. So that's a more common thing that usually we see in NoSQL database. So don't go to this way. Also, that's basically to any kind of persistence, any kind of configuration. Don't put the credential exactly inside the code. So use any way as possible to avoid that. That's why we as a developer love the 12-factor application, right? So in the perfect world, you as a developer, you as architect, does not need to know about the credential on production. Therefore, you as a developer or architect don't need to know about that, because on production, the whole default configuration will be overwriting to production environment or staging environment or so on. The whole point is, please don't use password and credential in the repository. Avoid to do that. When we talk about NoSQL, for sure, we don't talk about issues or lack on data integrity. Yes, NoSQL we need to handle with the disnormalization way to think. However, it does mean that it's like no integration, no data integration. On MongoDB side, for example, we have the schemaless design, for sure, but we need to make sure that an email, when you store that information, is a valid email. When you store a number, it's exactly a number. You can do that several ways. Yes, you don't need to use the database itself. When you talk about Java book, for sure, you can use, for example, beam validation to make that happen. Okay. For example, I know we love hipster stuff. We love to do a lot of stuff in the high way. However, NoSQL database does not mean no responsibility. When you put a NoSQL database on your architecture, we need to think about the complexity to handle that, because it's one more layer of infrastructure, and somebody needs to know about that. Remember, the first topic was about security. Please don't go to production until you know how to change the default user password, or until you define something that is not the default configuration. And yes, you need to maintain that. You need to think about backup. You need to think about how to upgrade this kind of NoSQL database and so on. So yes, make sure when you decide to go to NoSQL way, you need to have at least one person or one guy who knows to model on NoSQL database. And also, besides that, make sure there's somebody who knows about the operation side of this database. Okay, that's the whole point. Scalability. Probably you saw a lot of articles in book that said, okay, let's go to NoSQL because it has scalability. But what does mean scalability to you? Because scalability becomes so generic to everybody. If you have no idea how to solve anything, you put the word scalability and everything makes better, or everything feels better after you say that word. But scalability has much more than just one word, right? We need to do the right questions about scalability. Okay, when you say scalability is about horizontal scalability or vertical scalability? What's the trade-off when you decide to go to this way? Also, when you go to the right scalability, what's going to happen with the read scalability, also one? Basically, there's no silver bullet in a NoSQL database as well. So think twice when you decide to use first to use this word scalability. So avoid to do that because it's so generic to me. Yes, please send me questions. And also make sure the trade-off when you decide to go to NoSQL database. NoSQL as well does not mean no mistake. Yes. Make sure, because right now every single site has your home benchmark and it might not mean something good to you. Think about it. There is this amazing book, Database Internals, and this book explains how the database usually works. And beside this book, you can take a look at the CAP theorem. What does the theorem CAP means to you? Basically, is okay. The word is not perfect. There are three behaviors in database distributed system. So C of consistency, A of availability, and P of fault tolerance. And in general, we need to choose at least two. It's not possible to one single database to have the three behaviors in just one architecture. So make sure that when you go to NoSQL, probably need to think that twice, mainly because the does normalization thing. Because it's much easier when you start with SQL and you have database normalized. That means there's no duplicated data. And for some reason, we decide to go to NoSQL, and like Cassandra and MongoDB, you need to use the normalization, then do the opposite. So we start with MongoDB or Cassandra, where you need to do a lot of duplication data to follow the denormalization process, right? And then the opposite, to deduplicate the data, okay? Make sure about that. So NoSQL is not a no mistake technology. So you probably can do mistake like you do with microservice, any kind of solution as well. And I really recommend this book because it explains to you about the several NoSQL models. So right now, the most popular NoSQL types are key value, document, column, and graph. And each NoSQL has aspect to use. For example, usually key value is much easy to be scalable. However, it's hard to find information because key value looks like the map where you are able only to find information from the key, right? Column family, you have more powerful model, and then however, you still need to find information from the key. The exception is Cassandra, where you need to set up the secondary index. However, it has trade-offs. Document, where it's less scalable and you can do more complex queries. And now graph database, where you can do some deep relationship, deeper than a relational database itself. The whole point here is as much scalable the solution is, less complex in the model it will be to you, okay? And every time that I talk about that, I know I must to say that because NoSQL does not mean no trade-off. Yes, as you can see, I said CAP theorem twice because if you choose one behavior or two behavior, you have a lack of a third behavior. For example, if you go to consistency and availability, there is a lack to fault tolerance. If you go to fault tolerance and availability, there's a lack of consistency, right? And when we talk about database distributed system, we also need to think about the backup. How does it will work, right? There is this amazing book here that's Fundamentals of Software Architecture. And this book here is amazing because it explains a lot of trade-off because to this book here, the whole life of being architect is handled with the trade-off, because any solution will have a trade-off, and you as architect or senior engineer or staff engineer or principal engineer, whatever, need to handle that. You need to know and then choose. You need to choose each lack you have in architecture. There is no perfect word, unfortunately. And yes, as I mentioned before, there is several lacks on NoSQL database where you can choose. And it's not forbidden if you want to choose or combine solutions. For example, if you want to, you can combine SQL with NoSQL, for example. It's happened, for example, Netflix. Netflix has several solutions to the application. So it has a search engine that probably is a large search. The media stream is on Cassandra, and the recommendation engine probably will be on any graph database. And there's something happened with LinkedIn where it has a combination engine that probably will go on graph database. The processing engine will go to Cassandra and so on. You can combine SQL with NoSQL or maybe several NoSQL database to any kind of solution. This kind of combination becomes so popular, and that's why was born the word NewSQL. Basically, the NewSQL is a SQL architecture with several aspects or several behaviors from NoSQL database. For example, if you take a look on PostgreSQL or MySQL, they will have the behavior of schemaless. For example, they will have features for example, JSON, where you can use JSON if you want to. And that's fine, that's amazing, right? So because you can combine the solution. And NoSQL words, as I mentioned before, the most popular ones are key value, document, column, and graph. There is one more popular word that is multi-value. Multi-value is a database that has more than one behavior. For example, if you go to the internet right now and search to ArongoDB, so ArongoDB, you see that ArongoDB has, for example, several types. So basically, multimodal is when a NoSQL database has several NoSQL support. For example, ArongoDB has support to key, value, graph, and document. OrientDB, for example, if you want to take a look, just go to the internet and take a look at OrientDB. It has support to graph and document, for example, key value. And Elasticsearch, they have support to document, and they're looking for the support to graph database. The whole point here is NoSQL does not mean a single solution. You can combine, you can handle with several solutions on these words. Okay. So let's move on. Okay, my first topic was to talk about what NoSQL is not, because you saw a lot of articles with the beautiful definition of NoSQL that everything is amazing, but it's a little beyond that. So think twice when you decide to go to NoSQL production, mainly because there are several issues. As a consult guy, I usually see several huge mistakes on that side. For example, in Cassandra, I saw a lot of people who decide to use Cassandra as SQL, therefore try to use normalization inside Cassandra. And that was a huge mistake because Cassandra, for example, does not have support to joins. So you can try that. However, you're not able to do a column family, left join another column family. So that's not possible to do that. And besides the issue with infrastructure, the model or how the application is modeled to NoSQL database usually is the issue number 1. Okay, that's why I'd like to go deep on that aspect of the application. When we talk about modeling, my first tip to you is the key is the main reason that why we have NoSQL database. And the key value for sure, because you don't have another way to find information. To column family, mostly Cassandra, you have the option to use a secondary index. However, every time that you put more secondary index in your column family, it will decrease performance. Okay, remember that. So every time that you put secondary index in Cassandra, it will decrease the performance. In SQL database, the modeling is about normalization, right? So you avoid to have duplicated data. On NoSQL, usually you look to view. It's a query modeling driven. What does that mean? You need to understand your business, and then understand how they want to return the information to the application. And based on that, you will modeling your application. Okay, that's important to you understand that, because otherwise it will happen a huge mistake on the NoSQL side. But yeah, probably you heard that several times, right? So okay, I heard that several times. I read several books, read several articles, but my question is, how can I do that? Okay, let's move on. To make it possible, I will choose two NoSQL database to show how to modeling. I will choose the most popular, at least to me, on Brazil and Europe right now. And you probably know Cassandra. Cassandra is an open source from Apache Foundation. It's a column family, a wide column database solution. That they have several use cases. For example, Facebook was one client. Indeed, everything was born because Facebook, and then we had Netflix and so on. So I guess everybody knows about Cassandra, right? But let's go to the opposite side. What Cassandra is not. Okay, Cassandra, yes, you can use with big data. That's true. However, rich query is not the right way to use Cassandra. Remember, every time that you put secondary index, you probably will lose performance. Okay, Cassandra does not support relational database, so there is no way to use transaction in Cassandra, and also there's no way to use left join, inner join, and whatever join. Okay, so that's why Cassandra usually eat alone, because Cassandra is not able to join tables. Okay, that was a terrible joke. Sorry for that. But my whole point here is, when you talk about queries, let's define goals. So your major goal is go query by the key. So define modeling your application by the key. Sometimes, yes, Cassandra has two types of keys. So partition key and cluster key. Partition key, you can think about how the information will be stored in the cluster. For example, every time there is a Cassandra in the instance, this instance is responsible to a range of values. Okay. For example, if I have 4 Cassandra instance, the first one, the A instance, is responsible to the token value between 0 and 3. The second instance is responsible to the token between the value 4 and 7, and so on. Every time that you take a key, it will generate a hash, and based on that hash, the information will go first to that instance. For example, the name Juan is a key, Juan. and I will generate the hash based on the one key, and it will generate the 0 token, and based on what I said, it will go to the first index or to the first instance. Okay. The whole point is the major goal is use key. The secondary index is one way to use the search when with something that is not key. Okay, it's possible to do that. However, you decrease performance. The allow filtering is the worst option that you can use to search in Cassandra, because it's based on linear search. There is no optimization in this kind of search. That's basically Achilles' news on Cassandra. So again, the major goal is do query by the key, pretty similar to the key value. However, Cassandra has powerful ways to handle with NoSQL database. For example, Cassandra has list, map, tuple, and UDT. UDT, if you are familiar with OOP, oriented object model, you probably read the When Make a Type by Martin Fowler. And UDT is one way to you create types on Cassandra. So basically, yes, we don't have left join the join. However, you're able to have one list, one entity with list, with map, with set, and so on. Okay. And yes, I saw that a couple times. Cassandra does not need load balancer, so avoid to do that. Okay. Another good point is there is one way to you define the constants level of any operation on Cassandra. And you need to understand that every time that you define the constants level all, you are saying that the whole information must to go to the whole instance synchronously, and then return to the client. Okay, think about the 4 servers again. So I have 4 instances of Cassandra, and I have 1,000 of requests. Okay, so to each request, it needs to go to the whole 4 instances synchronously. I got the consistency. However, the availability is not so sure. Again, the cap theorem. By default, think that the information will be eventually there. So avoid to use consistency level all to everything, because Cassandra works better when you use the asynchronous storage option. And yes, every time that you talk about database, you talk about backup, right? So Cassandra is not trivial to use backup. There are several ways. There are several articles about Cassandra backup. You can use the asynchronous backup in Cassandra. And yeah, that's not the same of relational database. And you can use the snapshot. However, remember, the information are distributed between the instance. So to make sure that you will have the whole information, you need to do the backup to each. Generally, you need to do the backup to each Cassandra instance. Okay. Let's move on to a sample using Cassandra. So I have my entity, for example. If you are a Gmail user, probably you saw that each contact has the name, has some information, have the birthday, and usually it has some details about the contacts, right? For example, I want to define emails, so I have a label to email and then the information itself. The same thing happened with the fonts, right? So I have the fonts where I can put the label that I want to. For example, I can use home, business, and father, parent, phone, or something like that. In Cassandra, it will work this way. So basically, we create a column family with contact, for example, where it has a name, birthday, and then a map with 2 texts. That's a simple sample that you can use with Cassandra. So the whole information will be just one column family. Another sample using Cassandra. So think about the car. And every time that I want to return the car, I need to return the plate, city, color, and the owner. And that basically what happened here. So I have my empty car where I have my plate, city, color, and owner. So what happened if one person can have multiple cars, right? So yes, it will duplicate. So every time that you this owner have a car, the information will be duplicated to each car. That's bad. However, every time you don't need to do a join to return the whole information. Again, trade-off. Okay. And the UDT allow you to put the information whatever you want to. For example, if you want to put a name, ID, the city, where it's born, each language they speak, the person speaks. So feel free to put whatever you want. And as I mentioned, Cassandra has support to map, to list, and set. Cassandra is writing in Java, so the difference between list and set is exactly the same that we saw in Java. So list, you have the defined order, and you can duplicate items. On set, no, you're not able to duplicate items. In the documentation, say that it's good when you prefer to use set instead of list, because I don't need to guarantee the order, and besides that, there's no way to duplicate the information there. So by documentation, if the order is not important, you don't want to duplicate the information, as recommendation you can use the set. As I mentioned before, that's a receipt where you have the name, the city, and the ingredients. And again, you can put whatever you want in the ingredients. For example, you can put the unit of measurement, for example, 1, the number, the unity kilo, and the name of what? 1 kilo of water. The ID here is the receipt, because the whole goal is the name of receipt is unique. I have no idea if that's true, but on this case it's true. Okay. So basically, I explained to you how to model on Cassandra, and let's move on to MongoDB. Probably you heard about MongoDB because it's become so popular around the world. It's the second company of technology of database who has stock. So the first one for sure was Oracle, and then the second one was MongoDB company. It's become so popular because despite Cassandra, you have the option to do complex query. You can do aggregate. However, you are not able to do joins for sure because MongoDB has no support to join as well. The newest version of MongoDB, you have the support to use transaction. However, the documentation said that if you avoid to use that, because if you use that a lot, that means you are using the MongoDB wrongly, because you suffer with performance issue. Okay. So again, what MongoDB is not. So yes, MongoDB has support to transaction. However, avoid to use that at least the whole time. MongoDB has support to the asset. So, however, remember the consistency is important. However, it's not strong enough like the relational database. And every time that you talk about modeling in NoSQL database, there is this amazing article and this amazing presentation for Orin. So modeling in a NoSQL relational award. And one important quote that he said was, okay, usually the biggest mistake of the modeling of a database in general, not just a SQL or a NoSQL, is because you do that in the beginning of any project. However, you know better the project when it's more mature, and usually it's not at the beginning of the project itself, right? It's a lack of information, so you need to design one model in the beginning. However, sometimes you have no idea about the business rule, and sometimes nobody knows about that in the beginning. Okay. Don't worry, I'm gonna show the slides. I share the slide to you. But my point is, if you want to go to do any kind of modeling with documents, go to this presentation. It has several ideas, several tips, where you have more idea how to do a modeling with MongoDB, HeavyDB, whatever you want. Okay. Another topic is important as well. So you have the option to go to use DDD. And basically, if you are familiar with DDD, okay. Okay, thank you, Maximilian. You have the currents, independence, isolation. So if you are familiar with DDD, nothing here is new. So let's go to more details here. Don't worry, I'm gonna show some samples code. So I have the currents. The whole goal here is the main reason of a domain self-sufficient. So again, I don't need to use left join in if join to this information X does exists. So this guy is the empty. Is the main reason of this guy exists. Independence, so it must exist by itself. It does not need any more or any more information. For example, let's think about other, right? Because other are so popular. So usually you have the products, and you have the items, and you have the user. When you think about relational database, you have one table to each information, right? So in the document, you need to put the whole information together, because otherwise it will lose independence of the information. So it's vary on the business. However, the dependence of an entity means it must have one reason to exist. And yeah, the last one is isolation. So I'm not able to impact any other entity to do an amazing modeling with document itself. For example, here, I have my other entity with MongoDB. I have my object ID, right? I have the date where it was ordered. I have my product items, and I have my address where this order should be sent. Okay, so if you're if you're familiar with DDD, basically it is an aggregate of entity, right? So I have my entity aggregate where I have the whole information here related to this. The main difference here is, instead of I have a left join, inner join, or whatever, basically this whole information will be at one single document collection. Well, wait, Otávio, but what happened if I decide to update my address? So nothing will happen, right? Because if you order a product with this address, when you update, it won't change this order anymore. So it will change the next order. So I don't need to update the whole past order. And yes, we have the value object. So the document is mostly close to DDD itself. So if you enjoy do DDD, this is a good way to use. Okay, I explained to you the model. I explained to you what is NoSQL, what's not NoSQL. I went deep on Cassandra and MongoDB. Don't worry. Again, I will share this information, these slides. But okay, besides the complexity of the modeling, I need to handle the complexity of operation, right? Because I need to install new database, I need to install new systems, I need to install new instance, I need to think about the distributed data, I need to think about index, I need to think about security, the firewall configuration, something like that. And yes, that's why we have cloud, right? So basically, there's a couple of definitions to cloud. The best one to me is cloud is somebody else's problem. Because it's not just about server, right? It's not just about the computer. Basically, what I want to do is pay somebody else to handle this problem to me. For example, if I decide to go to IaaS, I want to pay to somebody else to handle the hardware to me. If I choose the PaaS, I want to pay to somebody else handle the hardware plus the infrastructure of my application. If I wanted to pay the SaaS, I want to pay somebody else to handle the problem to handle with hardware, the configuration infrastructure, and also the software itself. So basically, the whole point here is cloud, at least to me. I know there's several jokes about cloud is somebody else's computer. But to me, besides that, cloud is somebody else's problem. I pay to somebody else handle that to me. For example, I'm a software house company. I don't want to have somebody of operation on my side. What can I do? I pay to a guy, to Heroku, to handle the whole operation to me, while I just handle the code, for example. And every time that we talk about cloud, there are several options, there are several flavors, right? So right now, everybody talk about containers. Everybody talk about multiple infrastructure. Kubernetes becomes a new buzzword in this world, and service. So you have a couple of solutions, but remember, Icaro was the guy who went too much close to the cloud, and then saw the sun, and guess what happened? He fails down. So cloud has a huge amount of solution, but beware, in solution you need to handle the trade-off. Okay. When you talk about container, usually container is better when you handle with multiple architecture, but container with database usually is not the best way. That's why in general there is a huge discussion about that. Kubernetes is an amazing solution as well. However, that's a huge complexity. If you don't have somebody else to handle that to you, or if you don't want to hire some operation guy to handle that to you, I know the DevOps culture is amazing. However, there's several configurations, there's several things that is impossible to one person to know everything about the whole software development. And the service is the last option, so you can pay to somebody else and that to you. When you talk about Java frameworks, you have a huge amount of solutions, right? So to validation operations, sometimes NoSQL database does not have support to do the validation in the database itself. There is no constraint. Yes, David did showed me a question about, you do share list of recommended books to read? Yes, I will. I will share the whole slide presentation. You have the beam validation, right, to validate your code. If doubt, depend the constraint of database, because usually they don't have. You have the option to do the RM or RXM, basically because RM is relational database management, but you have the option to do the mapping. And the good news is usually NoSQL database has by default reactive program, because they usually handle with a string or any kind of solution that lays to retrieve the whole information in the database. That's a little bit different from SQL, for example. And again, every time that when you talk about mappers, there is a nice article about the impedance of paradigm, because Cassandra, for example, is column family, and Java is objects, right? So there is a huge impedance between encapsulations, interface, extend class, and so on, that I have support in Cassandra or Java. However, I do not have support in Cassandra. So sometimes you need to understand that. So there's amazing option, but remember, what is behind you is still a database. Okay, I guess I talked too much. So let's do a sample code here. So I have my, okay, don't worry. I have my simple, can you see my screen? So please let me know. Basically I have here my Maven dependency project where I have a couple of configuration. I guess I don't have enough time to go to the whole NoSQL database, so I will explore just one, that is MongoDB. But don't worry, I'm gonna share the whole link where you can go to the repository and do everything by yourself. The good news is, if you are familiar with Docker, what I have here is a Docker Compose where with a single command, you can start several NoSQL database. Basically, I did a sample with Redis, MongoDB, Cassandra, and Neo4j to compare the modeling and how everything works in each model. Okay. And by the way, if you have a question, please let me know. I have a huge pleasure to answer any kind of questions. There is a huge amount of solution in Java. Right now, I'm just using Jakarta NoSQL because it's a specification. If you remember what I said to you about the configuration must not be in the code. As you can see here, I'm using microprofile configuration. And there is a couple of configuration here in this properties file that is properly will work only on local hosts. On production, if you go deep on Eclipse configuration, you will see that I can overwrite the whole information. For example, on production, I can overwrite this information here. I can add, for example, user and password. So locally, I don't need to use a password. However, in production, it's a must to have, right? Therefore, you can do this kind of configuration, this kind of thing with Eclipse microprofile. And I have two configuration, one to document. So I'm gonna show the MongoDB, another one with key value, with, for example, on this case, I'm using Redis configuration. So that is it. I have a simple sample here, but let's use a different one. So basically what I do have here is a God where it has several entities, but let's do something else. So I will create a programmer. So programmer, 1 second, please. For example, here, you create a programmer class. Okay. So basically, what can I put here? Whatever I want. So I need to remind that to the proper word. So I will create a programmer. I can put whatever I want. So I will define a name as long if I want to. For example, I will put the name. I will put, I don't know, let me think, what else I can put here? The city where it was born. And yes, the language that I know. So for example, here, I can put a list of language. So language. Art, again, I can use any kind of SQL database, but let's explore MongoDB and also key value with Redis. So basically, both are schemaless. So I just need to create, I just need to define, and I just need to store the information, and here you go. I don't need to think anything else. So I have my programmer here, and that is it. So everything's able to I use if I want to. So let's create my first app. So okay, and just to make it simple, and then go to something else. Then I don't know, JAX or else. Let's stay at Java SE. I will create a container. It belongs to CDI, okay, if you're familiar with CDI. So it's a CDI 2.0 container, SE container, initializer, new instance, okay. One good point here is, okay, I can use try with resource if I want to. So what does that mean to me is every time that it will start, and when it's finished, it will send the close information to me. If I take a look here, I forget to show to you. I have two managers. And as you can see here, I have my bucket manager, that's entity manager to key value. Okay. As you can see here, to use a key value on my configuration property, it will read the information from my property where it can be overwriting on production. It will produce, and every time that I destroy, it will close. So my application will start in this line here. It will destroy my container, fire and even to dispose, and then I will close the connection. And I will create my programmer. So programmer one, new programmer. Okay. This time here we can do whatever we want, but let's make it faster. And let's create a couple of constructors. I know that's not good enough. I can do best, I know, but what can I say? I'm lazy today. So let's put a tree string here. Let's create a constructor. Just because it's CDI, okay? So I can put it replicated here, and I can put a Java doc if I want to, where nobody used to read. So please choose CDI only. And let's move on. So I have my programmer here, where the first one is my ID. My second one is Juan. The third one, I forget. So that's a good time to use a builder class if I want to. So city. So I guess Juan is Montreal right now. And the language, as you can see, I'm using Java 11. So I guess Java, I guess Go, and Ruby. I'm not sure. But anyway, so it's my show. I decided each language Juan should work on. So right now I have my entity. And to handle with NoSQL document in the MongoDB side, we have the document template. Document template. And this guy here, I need to inject by the container. So I will select the document template, where I will inject. And finally, I will insert this one here. Okay. Basically, okay, right now it's a return number one, where I can do a search. So I find a programmer class with the ID 1. Programmer, I found you. So the first step, you need to make sure that everything's working. So, I did a Docker down. So I will start with Docker compose up, and it will start my two instances, one with MongoDB, another one to Redis. Don't worry, you're going to have the whole sample on the GitHub repository that I will show to you later. And let's start here. Let's run the code. Hopefully it will work at the first time. But anyway, who knows? So it will start the application. And as you can see here, I find here the one. I'll show to you, I create the whole instance. I don't need to even create a kind of query. I don't need to create the database, any kind of thing, because MongoDB is schemaless. Okay, so basically what I did here was I put language. I don't need to, if I want to, I don't need to even define a relationship. For example, I put program language. Okay, let's think something else. I can create address, for example, here. So private address. And now let's put something more fun. So movie, list of movie that Juan likes. So movies, and I don't need to create anything else. So I can create a class, so a movie, and basically what I need to do is exactly something. So int, I don't need to have ID because movie depends to the programmer. Move name, I guess I can put the year, and finally the director. Okay, I will put several columns here. So column, column, and column. I will do exactly something just to save time. So sorry for that, yes, but this topic is about those SQL database, not about clean code. But anyway, I know it's wrong, so don't do that on production. And let's put the true thing here. And right now I have movie. Yeah, I need to feed that on my constructor. So add a constructor parameter. So here, so I have factor. So yeah, there's an issue here. So I don't have the movie instance yet. So let's create one. So Juan, which movie do you like? You are father, right? So you probably like Frozen. Indeed, you don't have any kind of option, right? So you must to enjoy this kind of movie. Let's see. Name Frozen.
Star Wars.
The year, I have no idea. The director, I have no idea. Let's put Disney here. It's like Baby Shark, right? So you're not able to choose anything. So Frozen. One important thing here. Why do I have insert and update on MongoDB? Because if you remember, as I mentioned before, okay, Maximilian did a question to me. Is necessary to annotate all the fields with column? Yes, the whole fields that you want to go to the database, you need to use the annotation column. Otherwise, it will be ignored. Why do I have that? Basically because first, it's a new API. It's more explicit where you are using. And also, why JPA need to do that right now? Because it's a legacy. JPA in the past used XML file to do the integration. That's why you need to do that. Right now, it's the new API. You can do everything by annotation, so you can use annotation just to define each information you want to storage on the NoSQL database. But anyway, so what can I do here? So first, I will try to insert twice one with the same ID, just to show that MongoDB follows the Captrium, where it had a strong C of consistency. As you can see here, my exception, I got the duplicate key error because I'm not able to insert twice with the same ID. So I have the option to update here if I want, or I can delete. So template, delete. I can use the same logic to delete by ID. So programmer, class 1, and then I will sort again and then do the search by query. And as you can see here, so, oops, I forgot an important thing here. Probably the toString. Yes, sorry for that. Let's update the toString here. So let's update the toString. And let's run again. And right now, my front end is my log, sorry. So But my whole point here is the Juan favorite movie is Frozen, that was born in 2021, and the director is Disney. Okay. Right now, I don't need to handle anything else, but you need to think, okay, give that I want to show information about the programmer. I usually have the option to, okay, I have one model to show the whole details. And also I have the option to show just a name and city or something like that. With Juan, it's a little bit easy because I can do this kind of query with Jakarta NoSQL if I want. But it's a little bit different if you think about, okay, what happened if you search for Juan entity that does have movie? It will return empty. So let's show to you here. So let's put here collection empty, whatever. Let's do the same thing. It's empty. Remember, MongoDB does not have validation by default. So because Java is static, yes, we need to handle that. However, if you want to, you have the option to like the name be an integer, another name be a long, another name be whatever you want. So you can put whatever. The whole point here is you can put whatever you want, but please don't do that. You can use, for example, validation if you want to. For example, if you want to make sure that the programmer has at least one favorite movie, you can use beam validation here. I'm not sure if I have like size. No, I don't have beam validation here, but you can include the validation and use validation. It will happen before it go to the database itself. Okay, that's a good question. How you do find a name by name? So with document database, it's easy, okay, because you can do search beside the ID. With key value, it's not possible. It's basically by the ID. With column family, with Cassandra, you need to add a secondary index. However, with document like MongoDB and Graph database, you can do if without create index. For example, on this API here, that's a MongoDB Jakarta NoSQL. You have two ways. The first one is to do a query by Fluent API. So for example, here I have my query, document query, select. What does mean Fluent API? Basically, is one API where you don't want to go to Stack Overflow or even the documentation to know how to use, right? So basically what I want to do, I don't want to do a query. So select where I put programmer. Okay. What else? Where? The name. Okay, I have no idea about those next options. So let's click the dot and then you can see. So equals, between, greater than, in, like, whatever. On the quiz, the question was equals by Juan. So equals Juan. It will build my query, and then I will do my query by select query. It will return to me a string of programmer Juans, because one Juan is not good enough. I mean, the word needs more Juans. And what I can do here is delete this link here and then delete here, and then the query by name is it's a string, right? So once collectors. Oh, sorry, collectors. Come on, collectors. Here you go. Sorry for that. To list, and then I will print. Okay. So basically, I did a query by the name. That was the question from Daniel. So as you can see here, query by the name. So with Fluent API. So I did a query exactly that we want. You also have the option to do a query by text. So let me think, template, select, query, select, start from, I don't know, programmer, where name equals name. Yeah, you can use prepare statement here. So I have the option to do the prepare. It will return to me a prepare statement where you, if you want to, can bind. So name equals Juan. And then you can do a single result. So single result with programmer 1. And then the query by text finding by name result. And then let's run again. Thank you, Gusta. Thank you, Daniel. Okay. And as you can see here, I did a query by name using Fluent API and a query by text using the whatever you want. The unique issue here is when you do a query by text, if you forget something, you might be some issue on real time. There's a little bit different when you do that by Fluent API, because if you forget anything like the condition, it won't compile. But if you do that on the text, you got the error on real time. You are free to use whatever you want. Okay, as I mentioned before, it has the issue on the syntax because it's not viewable. Name is at name, so we need to put any kind of condition here. There's one question about from Maximilian. Did you see some polyglot persistence involving JPI and Jakarta NoSQL API? There is a huge discussion about the integration between JPI and Jakarta NoSQL, and why not? Because JPI was created to SQL database, and Jakarta NoSQL was created to NoSQL database. Every time that we tried to do the time integration, what happened was, is like, okay, I kind of try to use knife as a fork, because both are persistent technology. However, one is built to one proposal, another one was built to another proposal. For example, NoSQL database has support to TTL, that is time to live an object, where it has no support on, for example, any SQL database, right? So usually it does not have support to, let me think, MariaDB or something like that. So I will create a new one here just to illustrate how key value works. So app key value. So key value. Basically, I will copy paste, and instead of use the document template, I will use key value template just to show to you, Maximilian. I don't need to delete. I see I don't have the insert anymore, so it has just the put. And the query, for sure, it's not possible to do this kind of complex query, because usually the key value template is like a map where I only able to do the query by the key by itself. So I have my key, one, programmer. So let's return my programmer here. And as you can see here, the result, that's a basic operation, don't worry. Just show how it works. Hopefully it will work. Okay, It got an issue about the reflection, blah, 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 blah. Let's see what I did wrong. Oh yeah, I need to put this constructor here in public, otherwise it got an exception. So let's create the public here and let's put the public here. It's because I'm using Janssen, okay? It's not some Jakarta NoSQL issues, basically the vendor that decided to use it here. Because based on, how can I say that? It's based on specification, and to bind JSON, it use Janssen. It's just for implementation. But anyway, as you can see here, I did a query, okay? It returned 1. But let's do the TTL. So I put here the TTL of duration of seconds, 1 second. And then I will do something that you're not able to do that in production. Please don't do it. Seconds, 3 seconds. And then I got an exception. So here you go, an exception. So basically what I'm gonna do here, I will insert, define a TTL of 1 second, wait 3 seconds, and then do the query again. And let's see, it's waiting. And let's see, so the result is empty. There are several particular behaviors on NoSQL database that it has no support to SQL database, and so on. For example, SQL database has SQL query. It has inner join, left join, where you're not able to use that on NoSQL database. You don't have transaction so fancy like MySQL does or Oracle does, because even the NoSQL that has transaction is basically one layer, is not able to do the nested transaction, something like that. I guess my time is almost over, so I will give some time to the questions. Right now, working She'sGeek. It's a company. It's a my new company. And what makes us strong? So the whole point of the She'sGeek is we're looking for the high coding standards. We enjoy the flexible work style. And yes, you love to continue the innovation. If you want to know more about She'sGeeks, you have the website, so go to shegeeks.io, our Twitter handle. And thank you very much. So if there is any question, please let me know. And thank you, Juan, to help me on the live code demo with your name in your favorite movie as well.
Wow, that was great. Thank you very much, Otávio. Merci beaucoup.
De rien. Oh, pardon, c'est canadien, c'est bienvenue.
Wow.
Excellent.
Oh, take that.
Très fort.
C'est bon.
Je sais pas si on a écrit toutes les questions. Il y a des gens qui ont demandé, entre autres, la liste de livres qui étaient recommandés.
Oui, je vais share cette présentation en 10 minutes. Après, j'ai besoin seulement de faire les uploads et share on Twitter.
OK. Bah, parfait.
Ok, excellent.
Et puis sinon, merci beaucoup. Oui, encore. Rien à rajouter.
Bien, bienvenue.
Et pour l'auditoire...
Obrigado, oui, c'est portugais. De nada.
C'est bon.
Je parle un peu de portugais aussi.
Un tout petit peu.
Ah, tout petit.
Pour le mois prochain, on ne sait pas encore c'est quoi, je crois.
Non, on n'a pas décidé.
On travaille sur la question, on était un peu occupé, donc on vous tient au courant, mais il y aura une présentation au mois prochain. Donc, en attendant, bon Java 16 à tous. Merci Otávio, merci Juan pour l'organisation et Anthony.
Merci Henri. C'est ça, on se voit le mois prochain. On n'a pas encore décidé, mais on va se voir, c'est sûr. On va voir sur quoi. Mais... Merci à tous d'être là.
Et-
Voilà.
Merci, au revoir.
Obrigado, muchas gracias. Bye bye. Au revoir.
Wow.